Welcome into the final regular season edition of Pete's Pigskin Preview, presented by Walk On Sports Bistreaux. I'm Neil McCready. That is MPW Digital football expert Pete DeWeese, and I'm staring at the button that says recording. It says recording right now. I don't really know what happened last week, but it all worked out because Pete on Friday threw together a 34-minute preview of Ole Miss at Arkansas. Got that to you on Friday in time for you to consume it before Saturday's game, a 42-27 Arkansas win at Reynolds Razorback Stadium. The Rebels now close out the regular season at home on Thursday night, Thanksgiving night, 6:30 on ESPN against Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. Talk about walk-ons in just a minute. First, I'll say, Pete, how are you?
I'm doing well.
We are taping this on Sunday night, so when you hear this on Monday or Tuesday, whenever we get it to you, and you're like, "What? Why are they talking so much about what happened last night?" In case we slip into that vernacular, I just drove back from Fayetteville. It's Sunday about 6:15 in the evening. Pete's got family plans in Mississippi, so he's going to be traveling and that kind of thing. So we said, "Hey, let's knock it out early and get it to you, and we'll get it to you in time for you to consume it in plenty of time before Thanksgiving night." We're brought to you by Walk On Sports Bistreaux. They put everything they've got into bringing you game day with the taste of Louisiana. Dig into their mouth-watering, made-from-scratch Louisiana cuisine like po' boys, gumbo, voodoo shrimp, plus fan favorites like juicy burgers, fresh salads, all in front of 70-plus TVs, 40-plus ice-cold beers on tap. Check them out in Oxford or Ridgeland today. Ole Miss plays on Thursday night, so you got Friday games. I guess the Arkansas-Missouri game, Iowa-Nebraska. Those games are on Friday. You've got a lot of the big rivalry games on Saturday. So go check out the walk-ons. My hotel in Fayetteville was right next door to a walk-ons. That place was jam-packed at midnight on Saturday night. People watching the late game, I guess Oregon and who was Oregon playing? I can't even remember now.
Oregon and who was it?
I can't remember.
Utah. That's right. I'd gone to bed by the time that game got good and rolling, I think.
People were packed into that walk-ons watching that game. So you can do the same in Oxford or Ridgeland. And when you do, please tell them how much you appreciate them sponsoring this show and all of our MPW digital content. All right, we're going to spin forward to Mississippi State pretty fast because it's obviously the big rivalry game, a big game for Ole Miss in terms of bowl pecking order and that kind of thing. 8-4, if Ole Miss ends up there, 3 out of 4 losses. I don't know exactly where they land. 9-3, I think they still have a lot of options from a bowl standpoint, especially with Tennessee losing and Hendon Hooker going down with an ACL. And hey, they no sure thing they beat Vanderbilt at this point on Saturday. Clark Lee and the guys. As soon as I gave up on them, they win a couple. So it's all there, right? There you go. All you need in life is for me to give up on you, and then the rest is just nothing but sugar. All right, let's talk about Ole Miss and Arkansas. Obviously, the first half went about as badly for Ole Miss as it could go. Went about as good as it could go for Arkansas, and then Arkansas comes out in the second play of the second half. And Rocket Sanders, I think it was 68 yards, long run. Nobody touched him. He ran through a massive hole, and then he made a couple of good cuts. He's a very good back, and he made a run. And from that point, the game was basically over at that point. Ole Miss scored 3 touchdowns to make it closer. Ole Miss ended up with 703 yards of offense, but when I look back on that game, I'm going to think about 2 things, Pete. I'm going to think about Ole Miss struggling in the red zone early, and I'm going to think about their complete inability to stop Arkansas's running attack.
You know, a lot of people on social media in different places want to talk about the officials and want to talk about the television crew that did the game. And I've got comments on our thoughts on that, but you know, the officials did not help Ole Miss. There were some calls that I thought were bad. That is what it is.
Yeah.
You don't dig that hole without playing poorly, period. Right? Obviously, Ole Miss could have gotten off to a better start had some flags not been thrown. But what we see on the television replay isn't necessarily what happened. Sometimes the replay cuts off early. The camera follows the ball, and I don't have the film yet. And I'm curious to see on some of them what you see. But ultimately, yeah, it was lack of ability to execute, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that really hurt Ole Miss. I mean, what we know about Ole Miss right now as a team is if you get them into sure passing situations, it's not a recipe for success for Ole Miss. Period. You can attack the offensive line. And you still have a young quarterback that has grown up a lot this season, that has done a lot of good things, but we saw him not have a great night the other night. And he made some great plays, but he missed some, and he had some opportunities.
He had some accuracy issues kind of all night long.
He did, and that showed up. And then so the flip side of it is defensively, it was bad. And I'm not gonna. I don't like to throw kids under the bus. I don't like to throw coaches under the bus. Like I have been bad mouthed up and down. I'm sure my wife sits in the end zone and not in the bleachers for a reason, right? And so, I don't like to do that, and I'm not going to tell you. I mean, I told you after the LSU game that the plan, for whatever reason, was to play soft, and they were probably trying to do these things, probably afraid of matchups. I don't think the plan the other night was maybe as bad as the score looked. And I know that's hard to say because there were times where I'm watching and they guessed right. They had the call, the numbers are there, and the D end is getting worked down the field, or the safety just misses in the hole. And from a coaching standpoint, there's only so much you could do there, right? And from a player standpoint, Sanders is one of the best backs in the country. I mean, the kid he's going to be an NFL running back if he still has tread on his tires.
Two best running backs in the SEC.
Oh, the three best, arguably, in the SEC. Maybe Jahmyr Gibbs being the other. They were on that field. Yes. There's no question.
Yes, indeed.
And Evans wasn't even healthy, but I mean, watching, God, Lord knows, watching 4 and 5 just go at it was something to see. And, one of the things that I talked about a little bit in the preview was Ole Miss is going to have to make a decision. Do we let them put it in Five's hands, or do we force them to let the quarterback run it? And, when they put the ball in Five's hands, it did not pay off for them. They weren't good enough at the point of attack to get the stops that they needed. And when they let one control the ball, he's just, I mean, God, there was one play where they had him dead to rights. I don't know if the call could have been any better. And it's two guys converge, and he just somehow splits, runs through a bad tackle, and he's out. And it's hard. Hell, they may have practiced tackling for 30 minutes a day last week. They may not have done it one time. I don't know. We weren't at practice. But so it's hard to say, well, we need to work on tackling. It may be getting worked every day for 20 minutes. Like, you're also at a point in the season where you have to be smart about how you work that and do it. And when you show up to Fayetteville and it's as cold as it was, and it's a rowdy environment, and that big joker's coming at you, sometimes it's just a business decision. And unfortunately, there were times where it looked like there were some business decisions made. And then there were also just times where athleticism took over, and some it was the matchup did not go in Ole Miss's favor. So, I was concerned about the run going in. I'm not going to say that I expected it to be what it was, by any means, but the reality of the Ole Miss defense that we know right now is when they have to get aggressive and put their secondary on an island and in a lot of matchup scenarios, it doesn't typically end well for them. And we saw that when Ole Miss, because, after the LSU game, everybody was like, why aren't we being more aggressive? Well, when they got aggressive against Arkansas, KJ made them pay. And it was the same thing against Alabama. When they got too aggressive against Alabama, Bryce made them pay.
Some one-on-ones down the field, and he made a decent throw or two, and guys caught the ball, and Yeah, I mean, there were some times where they went really aggressive and it worked, and there were some times when they went really aggressive and they paid for it, like you said. And and then hey, when you can't control Sanders any more than they did, it's hard to go super aggressive because if he gets to the second level and there's nobody there,
It's gone.
I mean, we saw that too. I mean, he's off to the
Mhm.
races, and he's not the fastest dude in the world, but he's plenty fast, and he's a big boy, and he sees the field really well. I mean, you talk about vision. We talk about Quinshon Judkins and vision, and God knows he's got it. I mean, he is a special player, but Sanders has that vision too. I mean, he sees guys coming. He kind of naturally moves where he needs to move, makes a good cut where he needs to, and then he's, like much like it is with Judkins, these DBs, business decisions. I mean, you're tackling guys like that at full speed in the open field on a 24-degree night. Doesn't feel good. I mean, we all talk about toughness and stuff, but I mean, I was up in the press box, which was covered, by the way, enclosed, and I had taken my jacket and put it over my legs because I was getting chilly, and so I can't sit here and tell you about toughness when a guy kind of takes a funny little angle on that. Like,
Well, and then you follow up trying to tackle him with then trying to cover somebody down the field. It's a defensive back at any level is a difficult thing to do, and when you're not cleaning everything up in front with the D line and the linebackers, it really makes it tough. And with what Ole Miss is asking those safeties in particular to do, you have to be able to keep some things clean in front of them. And when they did the other night, things were okay, but when they're not clean, it makes it very difficult because now that safety can't come down with the same level of aggression. He has to be more patient, and when you do that to an elite running back, it's hard.
obviously, barring a change, the storyline on Thursday night from a broadcast standpoint is going to be about Lane Kiffin. It's all going to be about Lane Kiffin. It's if you're an Ole Miss fan, it's probably going to be nauseating, frankly. But the game itself is going to be a pretty interesting game as well. Mississippi State on Saturday had an easy time against East Tennessee State. Starters didn't play much. Leach did the smart thing, got his players off the field. Backups got a lot of work, and they've lost the first two of the Mike Leach era against Ole Miss. They're going to want this game badly. Ole Miss starters played the whole game. I mean, they kept till the bitter end. It was a late game. They didn't get back to Oxford until 3 or 4 in the morning. They were practicing on Sunday from 3 till 7 with practice and meetings. It's all condensed. There's a lot of intangible advantages for Mississippi State. So as I hand it over to you for this game, I'm curious, how much on-field advantage do the Bulldogs have going in?
It's always an interesting week. You think if they flew into Memphis, it's
We're obviously having a little connectivity issue. Just hang tight. We're going to work through it here as Pete probably ends up reconnecting again. It's Ole Miss, Mississippi State, 6:30 on Thursday. It's there. I got you.
There we go. We're back. Okay.
We're back.
So like I was saying, it's those type of games, especially in these short weeks, where not being able to fly directly back into Oxford makes such a difference. I mean, yeah, you land in Tupelo, you land in Memphis, you probably slept on the plane. You get up, you get to the bus, you go back to sleep. But then you finally get to Oxford. Maybe you drop your stuff in the locker room, whatever, but you're in your car, you finally get home. It's a lot of interrupted sleep. So you probably sleep late on Sunday unless you had to get up and be in the training room, and then you're back in the field house. Now, the nice thing is, right, students are gone. You do not have to wake up Monday morning and go to class. But so the good news there is there's extra opportunity for rest, for treatment, for film study, for whatever, right? But you're also out of the routine that keeps you grounded a little bit. So the coaches try to They try to make sure to build routine for you and give you opportunity and do some things. But it's always just a different week, aside from being a shortened week and nobody being in town, and just everything feels a lot different. And so, the fact that Mississippi State played at home, so I mean, and it was a fairly early day game, I believe. I mean, if they wanted to be in their bed at 10 p.m., not that they were, but if they wanted to be in bed at 10 p.m., they were, right? Yeah. So you're rested. You don't play a full game with most of your starters. You don't have to travel afterwards. You have a little bit more rest. Now, you still battle the same things in Starkville you battle in Oxford of not being in the routine and some of that kind of stuff. But from that standpoint, it gives you a leg up, because guys that finished that game late in Fayetteville that were sore as hell getting on that bus and sore as hell getting off of it when they finally get back to Oxford, the guys in Starkville are waking up a little bit more fresh. And how you start the week really can play a factor in how you finish. So Ole Miss, I'm sure, will do a good job of trying to make sure to get everybody healthy. Practice will probably be a little lighter. One of the things that I was thinking about in preparation for this is offensively for Mississippi State, they do what they do. There's not a ton of deviation from week to week. They live in a very defined world that has flexibility built into it. And from a practice install shortened week standpoint, it's a really good thing for them. Now, Ole Miss does the same thing in the passing game. The Ole Miss in the passing game carries a wrinkle or two every week, but the reality is majority of their concepts, they are locked in. They're the same. They're not going to change. They might run it for, hey, this week it's this formation. This week, hey, we're going to use another formation. Here's the motion we're using with it. They do what they do. They do find wrinkles in the run game, how quickly they can adapt and pick some of those things up. One thing I can tell you is people in that Ole Miss Fieldhouse started preparing the game plan for Mississippi State well before that game was played in Fayetteville. Those coaches are not getting off the bus at 3 back in the field house at 7 or 8 to put a game plan together to practice that afternoon. That process has already started. So the question becomes, okay, how much new can we feasibly get in really by Tuesday, right? And on the shortened timeline. So all that stuff is interesting, and all that plays out from a defensive standpoint. I think both teams, again, they kind of do what they do a little bit. But there's definitely things that both of them will be forced to dive into and try to deal with over the course of a week. So I went back and looked at last year's game and kind of looked at how the two attacked each other. And, Ole Miss leaned on certain things heavily, but they were things that they had done in the weeks leading up. So it's not like it was brand new, right? So I would expect just a lot more of the same. In the NFL, you get a Thursday night game where teams, just finished on a Sunday, and they've got the short turnaround. Take the over, because the teams are going to come out defensively and they're just going to play cover 2 and cover 3 because they don't have time to get a full normal game plan in. It's a little bit the same in college. Maybe not quite to that point, but the game plans change a little bit. Right. So you have to be able to rely on, this is our system. This is what we do. Let's make sure we can make it work against this opponent. For Mississippi State in particular, I think every Mississippi State Twitter account that has somehow graced my timeline today has made jokes about we better run the ball. And I fully expect that Mississippi State is going to try to run the ball.
I mean, I don't in the last few weeks, I'd try to run it at them.
That's part of it, is what you've seen, but it's also, truthfully, it's what you've seen a little bit from Mississippi State. Now, these numbers aren't going to wow anybody, okay? But in 13 games in 2021, looking at my notes here, they had 270 rushing attempts for 820 yards, just over 60 a game, 10 touchdowns. That's 13 games, right? So far, through 11 games, they've carried it 236 times. They've run for more yards than they did last year, and they have one more rushing touchdown than they did in 2 additional games last year. And I think part of that is them recognizing the need to, because of how teams were starting to play them. So, I made sure to watch the Arkansas defense versus Mississippi State because from a structural standpoint, they're very similar in what they do to what Ole Miss wants to do. They play with 3-2-6. It can be the light box, and they're aggressive at times. Mississippi State came out running the football in that game. They ran the ball 36 times for 162 yards. They used some passing game that's just an extension of the run game in there. So, I mean, realistically, if you want to count some of the little shovel passes and quick screens on the edge, you could argue that Mississippi State essentially ran the ball over 40 times in that game. And it's because Arkansas gave them a 4 and 5 man box and said, we're not going to let you beat us down the field. And Mississippi State said, fine, then we're going to beat you right here at the line of scrimmage. And so Ole Miss, that was not Mississippi State last year. They ran the ball some, but I don't think there was a game in 21 where they ran it over 35 times, right? They're going to come out and try to run the ball. And if they can be successful running the ball and force Ole Miss to invite guys into the box, it really is going to put the strain on the secondary, which we've said could be a problem. Texas A&M, when we looked at their defense early in the year, they go back and forth from the 3-man front to the 4-man front, and sometimes they're box heavy, and sometimes they're really working to defend the secondary. They ran it 24 times against them. Not quite as effective, not quite as much, but every time A&M gave them a light box, Mississippi State ran the football. So I think that one thing, and I'm going to go ahead and share screen, and I'm going to show you guys some of that. I think one thing Ole Miss is going to have to be prepared to do for all the things that Mississippi State and Mike Leach want to do in the air raid and in the passing game is if Ole Miss is not prepared to defend the run game from Mississippi State, Mississippi State will use it, and they can be effective when they do it. So this is play one of the game for the Mississippi State offense right here. They come out in a traditional 2x2 spread set, not a true tight end on the field. And they do take one side of the formation on this particular play, and they condense them down and put them close to the offensive line. And they'll do this in the run game and in the passing game. So they keep you honest with it. But as soon as they see that they're getting this 5-man box from Arkansas, they've got 5 to block 5. They're going to trust their back to go get 3 yards, and they're going to hand the ball off. So this is play one out the gate, and Mississippi State pops it for a 9-yard gain on the Arkansas front. Now, we just saw Ole Miss run for 400-plus yards against Arkansas, right? So I'm not making a claim this is the greatest run defense in the world. The bottom line is the structure is similar to what Ole Miss does, right? And so, here in this first particular clip, Arkansas comes out and they have 2-5 technique. So that means their ends are outside the tackles. They have a nose. So they are gap deficient. There is one more individual or one more gap on the interior than there are defenders. Now, post-snap, they can try to fix that. They can move him down either pre-snap or post-snap to try and take it away. But right now, everything about this look from the Arkansas defense, and there you see the end shift, but you also see the athleticism of the tackle to go cut that end off and get underneath him. But that gives Mississippi State the numbers they want right there. Their backs run hard. They've been banged up there. I know they lost one either in or right after this game, but they run hard. They're not game breakers, but they are effective. They don't seem to turn the ball over, and they'll attack you. This is a couple of plays later, same drive. You're 2nd and 5 right here, 2nd and 4. Again, now they get a 4-man box from Arkansas. They found a formation to get a 4-man box. Mississippi State goes and blocks it up and converts again 7 yards. One of the interesting things to me about their run game right, is Ole Miss and so many teams now live in the RPO world where the quarterback always has an option to throw the football. One of the interesting things to me is Mississippi State, they do some RPO, but majority of their run game is committed to running the football. You can watch the receivers here. No receiver on this field is going to run a route. They are all going to block. And so when they decide we're running the ball, they're blocking everybody up and running the football majority of the time. Okay. It's a lot of inside zone, and it's what you would call a zone base, where because they're not asking Rodgers to read, he's not a runner. It's not how they want to use him very much. So they're not going to read an end. They're not going to read a linebacker. They're going to straight up block everybody in the box because the math tells them they can win. And then they're going to hand the football off, and they're going to try to block guys up on the perimeter. Okay. But they will also use some other things. So this fits into like a gap type scheme. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flip to the end zone here. So they get back in the same 4 wide, 3-by-1 formation, and they're going to toss the ball out. They're going to block down with the tackle. They're going to pull a guard out. Center's going to take the nose by himself. They're going to pull another guard out, and they're going to toss that ball and try to get the tailback on the edge. Okay. They will do things like the inside zone. They will do things like the toss right here. It is not the same as the way that we see Ole Miss toss the ball out, because there is no read element in what they're doing. You're not seeing Rodgers potentially keep it, right? Like the announcers the other night during the Ole Miss game made a big deal about how Ole Miss loves to run their GT counter, where they pull the guard and the tackle, and then, Dart has an opportunity to either toss it or keep it. That's not what's happening here. This is, again, straight up, we are committing to giving the ball to our tailback. You are giving us the numbers, so we're going to try to take advantage of it, and we're going to toss the ball out on the edge. Now, the next play has been a big one in their arsenal for a couple of years. Arkansas ran this for a big gain the other night against Ole Miss. And I may be seeing things, but I swear on television that when Sanders got up, he was shaking his hand almost like it was a cowbell. And if you told me that they called that play cowbell, or that was their signal for that play, I would not be shocked. Because literally when I saw Arkansas run the play, I went, no, they took that from State. And it's not that Mississippi State's the first team to ever do it, but they do it as much, if not more, than anybody I've seen in a long time. And they're really effective at it. So technically, pass play. But by all intents and purposes, this is just an extension of their run game. So they're going to show pass. The offensive line is going to sort out who's covered and who's uncovered, and they're going to release just like you would on a traditional draw. And the quarterback is going to look to the outside. Now, again, this is intentionally getting the ball to the running back. Look at all the receivers. Everybody's blocking, right? Nobody's got a route. There's not an option to throw this football. But as soon as that tailback steps up, quarterback turns, gives it to him. And again, it works just like a draw. And you can see, because they throw the ball so much, because people are so concerned with defending the pass against Mississippi State, that when they get this pass look, if you are too quick to get into your drop and you're not patient on that tailback, they're just going to take you where you want to go up front. They're going to let the back sort it out, and they're good enough to make a guy miss in space and turn it into an explosive run. So, this goes down as a 38-yard pass play for Rodgers, but this is a handoff. It's an extension of their run game. They run it a good bit. Here it is just a little bit later, still in the first half of the game on a 1st and 10, different formation now. There was a tweet a couple of weeks ago, and I don't remember who State was playing. It may have been the Auburn game or the Georgia game, where they kept coming out in this 2-back alignment, and people are going, what's the world coming to? Mike Leach has 2 running backs in the backfield. This is literally the origin of the air raid. Blue and green are their 2-back formations. And when the air raid became a thing, and they're at Valdosta State doing their thing, and then they get to Kentucky, it is a ton of time spent with 2 backs in the backfield. if run game, passing game, it all plays out of it. And they have gotten back to using a little bit more of it this year. But so they're going to give you the same look. And this time they're going to do it. They're going to put one back out in a route. Again, show pass. Get these guys dropping. Get everybody thinking pass. And then they're going to work the little shovel to the other back right out the back door. So there's the look. Boom, show pass to the right. You hold the safeties. You get the linebackers to step to the right. Again, the offensive line does a great job sorting out the trash. And they're able on a 1st and 10 to go ahead and pick up an easy 6 or 7 yards. It's a passing stat, but it's a run play.
And it's chunk yards they're getting too.
It is chunk yards. This is the type of thing that if you win 1st down and get them in 2nd and 12, great call, right? 3rd and 4, you're not pressuring a ton, great call. 1st and 10, great. There's so many places that you can apply it because it's safe. You know, if the kid drops it, it's an incomplete pass. The chance of this being intercepted, it just plays out like a screen pass, but without some of the same tendencies that screens often come with. And like I said, they do a really nice job of sorting it out up front. They don't do a lot up front, so they are good at what they do. They're not great in pass pro. They're not great in run blocking, but their scheme, they only have to carry so many tools in their toolbox. They're not asking these kids to carry 12 concepts. This is what we do. We run this draw. We run this screen. We run this zone play. We run this toss play. Right. And everything else is vertical set. And let's figure out our passing game.
Keep it simple. Sandwich and some lemonade, just simple.
It's for them. It is all about how many times can our kids rep it, so that no matter what you throw at us, our kids know what the answers are. And that's the same reason Ole Miss is very consistent in how they attack in the passing game, right? But what Ole Miss does a great job of is finding nuance and game planning their run game. So I told you a minute ago, it's very little RPO. When they will take RPO is when you decide to be aggressive and play man-to-man, because they believe that they can throw the fade against anybody with ease. Okay, so they have the same shovel pass called right here. You've even got linemen downfield on this particular play. But as soon as the receiver over here sees that he's pressed and he knows man-to-man, Roger sees it right now, and you see him give a little hand signal. If you look, he moves the back over. Okay, he's still not sure if it's man. Now he knows it's man, the safety. So watch him take his hands. See that little signal that he gives with his left hand right there? That's him telling you, oh, you're live now, baby. I know what I got. So doesn't step up, doesn't say a word to the rest of the offense, doesn't have to. Tailback still thinks he's getting the ball. Rodgers is going to turn, gather, ball's up, and he throws a very catchable fade ball. And so right there, they go from a second median, 28-yard gain on an easy throw to one of his big targets on the outside. So, if Mississippi State says, we're going to run the ball, and your response is, screw it, pack the box, play man, they want you to play man-to-man. Mike Leach's first game in the SEC against LSU, that is what they want you to do, right? So you have to really pick your spots in how you do that, okay? So I'm going to change flavor a little bit, and I'm going to give you a different look, different defense. I'm going to give you some Auburn, okay? Talk a little bit about the passing game and the ways that they will attack you. And we talked about this last year, kind of getting ready for state. One of the reasons Rodgers is so effective in this offense is that he's been in it since he was in middle school, a version of it when he was in high school, and his dad was his coach, and they're running a version of the air raid. And he does a really nice job of getting into and through his progressions. He knows where his guys are going to be because, again, they're so consistent in the concepts that they run and how they're going to attack you. So he does a great job. So right here, this Y cross, and they have several variations. And this is probably the number one downfield concept in Ole Miss's arsenal as well, right? It's not unique to Mississippi State, but they're going to push vertical on the outside. They're going to put the slot receiver on an out route, and that's the first part of his progression. He may be locked in, Kenneth, or the out. It may be about the vertical. He may be having a choice between either one. Different guys read it different ways. As advanced as they are in the system, it could be true coverage indicator. Hey, if I get this coverage, they're live. If I get this coverage, they're dead. It could be this coverage, one of them's live, the other's not. So then on the backside, they're going to work this crossing route, trying to get into the void. This guy's going to work vertical on a curl, and the tailback is going to end up out here in some version of the flat. So you built all these levels to attack both vertically and horizontally. If they stay in a too high defense, like they show right here, this safety is going to lead you to where you need to be most of the time. If this safety hangs on this hash to defend the crossing route, then one of these guys has probably had a chance to come open. If that safety leaves and works his way outside, all you have to do is give time for your crossing route to clear the backers, and you can find the window here. If the middle of the field closes, if this safety rotates, if something happens and they end up in a one high, this curl flat combination on the backside is a day one basic cover three beater. So it's a very versatile concept for that reason. One of the nice things they do here is the way that they use the motion. If you were to line number 11 up on the hash, this safety could likely play with inside leverage and is now in better position to attack the route. But by starting in these wide splits, motioning in, you out leverage the safety pre-snap. So a lot of people, when people originally work this and teach it, a lot of them, they teach this crossing route. They use the language, they say under Sam, over Mike, where you're taught to, no matter what it takes, you go under the first backer, but then you climb and go behind. As defenses have kind of changed, people aren't being sticklers about going under anymore because they've realized that the best path is vertical. You get a bigger window once you do bend and kind of tuck into that space behind them. So right here, you can see Roger starts to his left. That's where his progression is. And then how quickly he gets himself off of that, ready to throw, balls out in rhythm. And the safety makes a decent play on the ball, and he's still late on it. Now, when we talk about their concepts and how routine they are in their concepts, there are air raid purists from the Mike Leach tree that they only run this play this direction because they want you to get so comfortable in throwing it, so comfortable in your landmarks, and so quick in your progression. There are guys I know that at high levels that will only run this to the left. And maybe if the quarterback is better, it's only to the right. And then there's guys that do it both ways. But you can see Rodgers here, starts his motion. Eyes now, he knows where he's going with the ball right now. He's starting to make sure, there it is, boom, find it, rip it, ball's in the window. He throws a lot of accurate balls. They do a good job. What he probably does what he does best. He wants to push the ball down the field without being risky, but he is check down Charlie if you give it to him. If your linebackers play with depth and you take away the down the field stuff, he will take a running back in the flat for a 4, 5, 6, 7 yard gain all day long. The teams that do a great job against this offense are guys that force the underneath throw and make the tackle for limited gain. That is absolutely essential. That is something that I would, quite honestly, there should be some concern there because we have not seen Ole Miss tackle well in space defensively. Here, this is an example where they go to pressure. They bring a corner blitz right here. They've got 6 guys in protection right there. He works through his progression. This is just their mesh concept. So he's got this deep out right here. Ooh, don't know what happened. I messed up He's got a deep out down here to the bottom of the screen to his outside receiver. He's got a running back in the flat, and all they're doing is they're building a little bit of a triangle. Okay. So you've got the deep out here. You've got the flat route here by the back. He's going to go set the pick here. He's going to come underneath on the mesh route here. If it's man-to-man, he is either going to rip it to his back right now, or he's going to find one of these crossers as they set picks for each other. If he gets zoned, he's going to go through his progression, and the offense has created this triangle to distort the defense. And he's going to work that triangle based on his read progression. And I know, again, different guys in the system read it different ways, and I'm not 100% sure how Leach reads it now. What it looks like is he's looking at his out route, quickly comes off his running back as soon as the backer expands. But he knows as soon as this inside backer, actually D-end, expands with his running back, he knows that means that this void is about to come free. Because you're either man-to-man on him and he's getting picked, or the guy that's supposed to be running with him is going to have to fight through traffic. So he's able to make an easy throw right there. It's Tulu Griffin, who's their kick returner, who is elite in the return game. Special teams is going to be absolutely huge in this game, in my opinion. But here he just makes an easy throw underneath, and it's an athlete in space that's fast enough to go do things with it. Same concept, just window dress it a little bit different down in the red zone. Now, instead of giving you the out route at the bottom of the screen, what they're going to do is they're going to put that receiver on a post. Okay. And I wanted to show you this clip, just to show you kind of the versatility in their concepts, but two, he does not have a huge rocket arm. But what he does, messed him up here. What he does is he anticipates and puts the ball in windows at a high level. So he's going to throw this post. Most people would tell you that safety sitting in the middle of the field takes that post out of the progression. He's going to put his eyes on him. The kid, the safety, it's red zone. He sits on the goal line. He has nowhere to go. There's no reason to back up. But he knows he trusts his receiver to get a good outside stem to funnel the corner out before he breaks. And if he can hold that safety and that safety doesn't move, the right timing gives you a chance right there. And the receiver does a good job of catching the football, knowing he's going to take a shot. But the big thing here is the timing of this throw is part of what makes him effective, right? And we have seen times this year, we would see timing throws like this from Matt Corral a lot last year. Jackson Dart has not been as consistent making these throws. This is reps, this is experience, this is maturity, and this is complete trust and understanding in his offense. He knows where he's going with this ball. As soon as that safety holds the middle of the field, ball's out. It's a tight window. Couldn't have been thrown much better than that. And then, I kind of referenced it a minute ago, just talking about they want you to play man. They have answers for it. When they see man, they are not afraid to put the ball up. Every single day in practice, he will probably throw 15, 20 of these balls on air. He'll probably throw another 10 or 15 against 7-on-7 or scout team or one-on-ones, whatever it is, right? And then that's not even counting what's scripted in their team periods necessarily. They throw this ball so much. They landmark it, they track it, they do a great job. You have to be successful running this play. In their vernacular, 6. That's the name of it, 6. And they are telling everybody. Now, the inside receiver here, instead of staying vertical, he slants it because he knows he's the hot route in the progression. But everybody else is just working vertical fade landmarks. And he's going to catch this ball. He's going to get it out before the pressure gets there, and he's going to give his big play receiver a chance to go make a play. So again, for Ole Miss, it's the balance of making sure the number's there to defend the run, because Mike Leach will get stubborn and continue to throw the ball. But if you give it to him, he has proven this year he's willing to run the ball a ton. At the same time, You can't say let's be aggressive and go play man. Last year, Ole Miss's defense, they mixed it up. They gave them different looks. They brought pressure from different spots. They showed pressure, dropped out of pressure, and handled things well. But I think across the board, they were a little bit more mature last year, right? I don't know. We have not seen the ability to consistently mix things up at the same rate this year. So I'm curious to see how they handle that.
Yeah, for sure. Totally different this year.
Kind of flipping the script a little bit, and I didn't even pick out particular clips here, but just talking a little bit about Mississippi State's defense. Like, I kind of said this about Arkansas last week. They're a little bit hard to figure out, and I guess I said that in what nobody saw but the two of us. And let me tell you, you guys missed something that was award worthy. I mean, we had a great conversation last week. It's a shame the internet gods didn't want you to see it. I'm sure Elon Musk has it somewhere saved in some online portal, but it'll be sold at auction later. But maybe sell it as an NFT. A complete work of art. But I can assure you, one of the things we talked about was I can't figure out Arkansas's defense, because from a team perspective, the numbers aren't great. From an individual perspective, you've got guys at the top of every leaderboard, right? So Mississippi State is similar, but not the same.
Right, because after watching them play on Saturday night, they're not very good, but yet they've got two or three guys that kind of make plays. The 42, I think, Sanders.
Yes.
He makes plays. All of their linebackers kind of make some plays here and there. The corner outside number 3, he's not awful at times. But yeah, they gave up 700 yards, and they're not.
They're not. But they have some guys that make plays.
And they have a couple of guys who make plays when they need plays made.
Yes, that well said. And the thing about defense, first of all, Mississippi State's defense is better than Arkansas's. But nationally, they are 48th in scoring defense. Based on the NCAA website that I looked at, which probably had not been updated from yesterday, but I didn't pay attention, Ole Miss was 47th. Right? So we're sitting here saying Ole Miss has not been good on defense, and NCAA says that State's one behind them in scoring defense right now. Right? Now, in the SEC, they're 8th in the league in sacks. They've got 22 sacks on the season. But they're first in the league in interceptions with 14. I believe they're first in the league with interceptions returned for a touchdown. And so if you have a young quarterback that's having a little bit of accuracy issues, that is something that you have to be concerned about if you're Ole Miss, right? Rushing defense, they're giving up like 149 yards per game. It's like 68th or 69th in the country. But those numbers are skewed, just like Ole Miss's defensive numbers are skewed, but Mississippi State's are skewed by the East Tennessees and some of the non-conference teams that they've had. I mean, there have been some teams, especially in league play, that have been successful, but it is hard to be continually successful running against them because of the style of defense they play. And even going back and watching the way that Ole Miss attacked State last year, Ole Miss threw the ball around a good bit early to try and soften them up to be able to run the football. First drive of the game last year, Ole Miss went for it on 4th and 1 and ran inside zone, and Mississippi State absolutely stuffed it and turned the ball over right there. And so there's nothing Ole Miss has done that makes me think they're not going to be successful to some degree running the football against Mississippi State. I would be a fool to make that prediction after what we've seen them do fairly consistently this season. But the style that Mississippi State uses can make it difficult. So I'm going to show you this. This is from the Alabama game to give you a little bit of an example, right? This is a typical formation that you might see Ole Miss use: tight end close to the H-back, close to the box, 3 receivers kind of spread out, right? And they're going to base out of this stack defense, this odd front defense that is typically going to keep 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers on the field, as well as 3 safeties. And the safeties are pretty versatile. The middle safety, who is here, I think he may be 13, maybe, will come down and will play in the box and around the box some. But they do a good job of, they play smart zone principles behind a lot of what they do. But they're also very aggressive, especially at the corner position, and have the ability to make plays. So I'm going to flip to the end zone copy of this, okay? You look at this right now, and they essentially have 7 defenders around the box. Now, pre-snap, one linebacker's walked out, the other linebacker's walked out. You could say, well, there's really only 4 guys between the tackles. But one thing about this Mississippi State defense is the picture is going to change, and it is going to change a lot. So as you watch this first play happen, they're actually going to slant this end inside because they are bringing number 2 off the edge. They're going to slant the opposite end to the inside, and they are actually going to loop the nose all the way around as a run stunt. They're doing this so that if Alabama is running counter back away from the tight end, because it's something they do a lot, you are now adding another defender that's unaccounted for to the fit. When Alabama runs zone, which is what they end up running here, and they go attacking, he's going to stay outside. He's actually going to probably take the gap between the tight end and tackle so that he can fit outside. He's going to maintain his gap, and you see the linebackers are just going to match path, and they're going to try to force the cutback. Now, again, Ole Miss fans now, they've seen the Alabama offensive line. They kind of have an understanding of what they are, and you can see right here, it's first play of the game, and they are an aggressive, attacking, downhill defense. The linebackers, I don't know if there's any of their linebackers or individual stars, but they play as a unit very aggressively, a lot like the Arkansas linebackers that we saw last week. But you can see the movement and the chaos, and then the urgency that they play with up front can cause a lot of problems. In some regards, going right at them is maybe the best way to do it instead of going laterally at times. I don't think they're quite as strong as they were last year on the defensive front, but they're certainly not bad by any means. Okay. Next play, second and long now. Alabama comes out and tries to go play action right here. And, you can see and we said this against Arkansas, and we saw Ole Miss try to do it. If you can get on their safeties, you can find some space against their safeties. Here they come up, they're able to get a safety one-on-one, but Bryce doesn't like it, feels a little bit of pressure on the backside, so he doesn't take the downfield shot. But again, they play, when they play their own offense in practice, they have to force these checkdowns. They do a really good job in most of their games of trying to take away the over the top, force the underneath, and then again, they do a really good job of playing with urgency and rallying up to the ball. So, you go from first down, you see the obvious run stunt. Now here we are, second and long. They're don't blitz. They don't bring any pressure. You can see them moving the front pre-snap. They kick them over, get them where they want them. Now they're just going to rush 3, and they're going to play zone behind it and keep everything in front of them. They do a good job of kind of picking and choosing, I think, when to be aggressive. And so here you're third and medium now. So here they are. They're showing a little bit of a pressure look. Here they are walking into it, and they're going to come out with it with the zone blitz, right? They're showing that they're going to rush 5 right here. They're actually only going to rush 4. They pop everybody out. They play zone behind it. And again, Bama's forced to take the check down, and State tries to rally up to it. So the offensive line for Ole Miss is going to have to do a great job in passing situations of managing all the chaos and the pressure looks that they're going to see. Jackson Dart is going to have to do a good job of getting through his progression to take what's there and not force the football. That is that's going to be a big part of this game, because that's, and I do think there were times last week or on last night where there were a few times where he found his check down, and Ole Miss wasn't able to get huge gains out of it. But he's still turning the ball over some. He still had some issues, but he's still, for the most part, doing a good job of managing his checkdowns. I think what Ole Miss would like to see him do at times is maybe not pull to run as quickly as he does, but maybe pull the ball and find his checkdowns. And if he can do that against the state defense, there is some opportunity there. Okay. Again, here they are again. Alabama comes out the next drive. They go play action again. Have opportunities to work curl routes down the field. He doesn't like it. This is something, this is a nerd thing, right? This is a coach thing. A lot of times when you coach linebackers, you talk about guys playing on a string. They should look like puppets that are tied together, and their movement should be similar. Watch all four of these linebackers, in particular the three that are to the bottom of the screen. And this stood out to me as I was watching it, is look at their steps. When they realize the pass, they're almost mimics of one another, right? And it's a sign of coaching, honestly. But it also, like, they understand the role, they understand their scheme, and they understand their principles. And there's not a ton of times in these games where you see their players looking entirely lost. And unfortunately, there are times watching Ole Miss last night where guys just felt out of position.
Yeah.
Right. And so, that's going to be, part of the challenge. And again, there's no reason to think that Ole Miss cannot be successful moving the football against this defense. But again, I will say this: their defense, and I feel like State has been like this for a long time. Their front is aggressive. Their back end will take risk, but they are a group that absolutely feeds and thrives off of energy. Every time I watch them play, I feel like defensively in particular, they thrive off of energy. If their offense is creating energy, if their special teams is creating energy, or if they're doing it themselves with negative plays and turnovers. And so in Oxford, not in Starkville, hopefully with a good home crowd, if Ole Miss can create the energy we've seen them create at home this year, and not let Mississippi State be the source of energy. It sounds so crazy, but I do think I think that's a big piece of the success for Ole Miss, because I don't want it to sound like, I feel like I've been talking about this Mississippi State team like they're a 10-2 football team, and they're not, right? They're not a bad football team, but they're certainly not a great football team. But we haven't seen Ole Miss play the past couple of weeks. And I don't know if we've seen them at any point this season other than spurts of being a complete football team on both sides of the ball clicking at the same time.
Yeah.
And in rivalry games and on short weeks, you have to be able to do those things. And so you have to be able to do here when, they're able to get to the middle safety and catch a guy that's essentially a tall, long linebacker and get him matched up on a receiver. And Ole Miss is going to have to be able to take advantage of those things and create some explosives down the field. Last year, Ole Miss did a great job of taking Drummond, and they used him in motion, and they threw screens to him on the perimeter. And that's how they created a lot of their offense early in that game that opened up the run game and opened up other things. But we haven't seen that element be as successful this year for Ole Miss, right? So I'm real curious to see, does Kiffin bring that back? Does he have somebody that he gets those swing passes and all of those things too? And then, Ole Miss is going to have to play a clean game from a penalty standpoint. We saw how much it hurt them, legit or not. We saw how much it hurt them last week, whatever. But I've seen multiple people reference it today on Twitter as And I think my favorite, said, if there's a Vegas line on whether or not an unsportsmanlike penalty is called in a play involving Malik Heath, pound it, right? And that's not a knock on the kid. That's not a knock on. It's a dude that left their roster to come be a part of this one, and there's going to be some chirpiness
for sure
because he's a confident player, and they're going to put Forbes or whatever their corner is on him, and that dude's a confident player, and there's going to be some jaws moving. So, managing that emotion and managing all the emotion of the kind of the cloud that's hanging over the field house right now, I think is going to be important too.
One of the things I'm interested to see with the fans, what the atmosphere is like. If Thursday there's been no resolution to this by Thursday, what's the atmosphere? Can you kind of feel it a little bit? My guess is you'll be able to, and I don't think that's something that media makes up. I think you'll be able to kind of feel it a little bit that, hey, there's something weird in the air, and it's stuff like that can filter into a team a little bit. I think that it's clear that it has at Ole Miss, at least to a degree, and for State, like I said at the beginning, they've lost 2 of these in a row. They desperately want to get it. They don't want 3 in a row. And I anticipate, for whatever reason, I'm kind of anticipating a weird game. I don't know why. I read the Alabama game right. I don't think I read Arkansas right. I thought Ole Miss would answer the bell better than it did. I thought that was going to be a close, maybe even middle scoring game. I didn't see it. But this one, I just kind of feel like it's going to be weird. And so,
there's so many things with the game being. I hate the game being on Thursday. And part of it is you don't know what you're going to get from a fan standpoint, right? Because the reality is for a lot of people that don't have a condo in Oxford or don't have the hotel room that they booked months in advance, it's harder to just go for the day. Sure. Unless you can convince your wife and everybody else in the family to, hey, let's do Thanksgiving on Wednesday or let's do it on Friday, that's a factor. And then here's, honestly, I think this is kind of part of the challenge for the Ole Miss fans is you show up and you're loud and all of a sudden maybe something doesn't go great earlier and everybody's living in this maybe skeptical world. And, some people are confident that one thing's going to happen and others are depressed that something else is going to happen and whatever. And nobody really knows right now. But if Ole Miss has to control the energy in that stadium, that's just the reality of a rivalry game, and there's going to be State fans in the stadium and there's going to be cowbells in the stadium. And, the fans, as much as Kiffin likes to talk about it, they have to play a factor in this game, in my opinion.
I agree. It should be awfully interesting. We will be back. I don't know, sort of depends on what happens, frankly, with a couple of the things that we're talking about here. We might be potentially not back until a bowl game. We might be back to talk about different coaches' schemes. I don't know, and I'm being as honest as I could possibly be. I'm preparing on both ends. I'll say that, and I think that's just the wise thing to do. So we'll see. I just don't know whether this is Lane Kiffin's last game in Oxford or whether this is a week that's going to bring a commitment on his part and a renewed energy. And both of those things I would think are frankly on the table. So we'll be back to cover it one way or the other. And Ole Miss will go bowling. We'll find out bowl destinations in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. So we'll talk about that when the time comes, when we get a bowl matchup and all of those things. But Pete, thanks so much as always for doing this. It's been easily the hit of the football season. Everybody has loved it. It's been great, and we'll be back with some more of it in the month of December as we get closer to the bowl season.
Sounds good.
Been brought to you by Walk On Sports Bistreaux. Don't forget Ridgeland and Oxford location. Stop in, enjoy a meal, an appetizer. Their great beer selection, their full bar, and more. They're at Walk On's Sports Bistreaux in Oxford and Ridgeland. For Pete, I'm Neil. That does it for this edition of Pete's Pigskin Preview. Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Enjoy the Egg Bowl. Have a great Thanksgiving. Please be safe traveling, and we will talk to you again next time.